All right. Welcome to the Fourth Brain Podcast. I'm Ali.
And I'm Somil. And today we will dive into the agentic economy. I think there have been a lot of discussions happening about what value will agents bring, how will that impact people, jobs, markets, and different perspectives. I think IMF also released a report lately about it. So the core idea, I think what we want to do here is set some fundamental principles of agentic economy, how we see it, and from those principles, then maybe we can drive some kind of an argument on how do we see the future. How about that?
That sounds good. So let's get started then. Principles.
Yes. So I think 5 major principles that we can describe in the context of agents. I think first one is autonomy. And of course, the whole purpose of agents is that they can autonomously create value, negotiate on your behalf, take actions on your behalf, and basically create economic value, create economic activity. And everything that they do, something that has significance, for example, changing a price or making an order, or taking care of a customer or distraught customer, all of that, anything that adds value to a company's top line or bottom line, I think that's we call as economic activity. I think the second one is decentralized resource allocation. What we see that what we have understood, the more traditional economic principles where resources are tied to certain activities or processes, and they're basically employed or deployed to do that. I think in case of agents, it's more decentralized and more like network. So all the resources are available on network for agents to choose from and do the work. So agents can decide in real time. So they can really work very independently with the resources and decide what resources they need when, and also share it with other agents. So that I think the whole resource sharing allocation becomes a game changer. Third principle, probably we look at the market equilibrium and how can agents help create more self-regulating markets. Because when the agents, for example, if you look at algorithmic trading, the agents together can react to different events. And I think we already have example like 2010, the 2010 stock market crisis, where algorithms start reacting to one another, leading to some very strong decrease or drop in the market value. I think market lost almost $1 trillion in around 4 hours.
That's amazing.
Yes, but I think now we have got more guardrails around it. But agents can act and can reach new equilibriums, can reach have different type of negotiations, have different contracts between them that humans might not even understand. Then it's also ability to operate on behalf of people. How can they, for example, how can they kind of get the benefits on behalf of people? How can they maximize the utility for individuals or for business? So not the sales part, but maybe the buying part. How can it help me get the best value for myself, or how can it help me figure out what's best for me? And I think the fifth and final part is the market expansion and inclusion. I think agents can create new markets, even small micro markets that was not viable before or not even accessible before to people, create buying selling relationships in very niche areas. Could be, for example, you have dynamic sharing of resources. For example, your agents can find you like a 30-minute deal for rent out your vacuum cleaner when you're not using it, or rent out your car during that 45 minutes when you're having lunch. It's a bit extreme, but it's plausible to find those micro opportunities. I think people will not be able to do that, but agents can create these such market. So I think there are some fundamental principles that come from the decentralization, from autonomy, from creating novel buying selling relationships by acting on behalf of people. I think there is a we need a different way of looking at how agents can operate in the economic context. What do you think?
Yeah, I think what I like about agents and the concept of agents is the decentralized manner of them. Like if you look at where the core AI models, or let's call them LLMs for now, as an example, they are very much a monopolistic technology, because you need to have billions of dollars to really be able to have the best model ever. If someone gets it to a point that's cheap, that's a benefit. But the way the agents create value on top of that core is where there would be a level playing field for everybody to play. Like examples I want to use are, for example, you could see new kinds of service companies coming in, right? With a few humans fronting and a lot of agents doing the actual work, right? Instead of you doing nearshoring to scale your own development team, the nearshoring team is a bunch of coding agents with a few senior architects who put things together. That means that the even service economy, the services will be much more, especially digital services, will be much more scalable. And the economy from that will be scaling much, much faster. That's one aspect of it. There is quite a lot of aspects of just speed of execution for me is also very, very important, right? So simple example, I was thinking about Uber drivers, and the scale of Uber is very interesting. But when you sit in an Uber, you see drivers looking at their phone all the time, trying to answer yes or no to requests while they should be driving, right? But then there could be an agent looking at that and deciding, okay, this actually based on the criteria my driver has given me, I should take this one. Or I know he usually goes for lunch at this point, so no thank you. Or oh, this goes close to his home and it's late in night, so he wants to go home, so maybe this is a perfect drive. He doesn't have to do that and get distracted and then crash the car. Hopefully not, but that's one, like those kind of. But also by doing that you can also respond to things much faster. And I actually think this is a conversation I wanted to have as well. Like, where do we see, because usually these kind of transformational technologies are used mostly in consumer markets. Then they start slowly coming to companies, right? How do you see that balance in between the consumers and companies? Because I would love to have an agent in my personal life, knowing that I'm going to finish my work meeting at X and it can actually arrange an Uber to pick me up as soon as I'm done, so I don't have to fiddle around with Uber in my meeting, so I can make it to the next one. All right, these kind of things would be fantastic. What's your
Yeah,
view?
so I think you spoke about the utility maximization by putting drivers' interest and intent on the platform, kind of deciding or giving what's best for them in a context. I think you also spoke about the resource allocation, so getting the Uber when you want it, and you really want to make sure that you get all the right prices. I
Exactly.
think there are great examples, and I think the one way for people to understand is in contrast. I think we better understand things in contrast. So I think also, just to for the sake of dialogue, how about we try to contrast between the agentic economy and the today's modern industrial economy? What do you think are the key differences?
So it goes back to our current economy wants to have, it is human driven, right? That's a given. But everybody wants to make it centralized because that's the nature of humans. And everybody wants to have it hierarchical and government driven, or the monopoly driven economy, as I call it. Automation is more of a convenience rather than a fact of life. And it's very specific to specific tasks and very limited. This is how I see the economy. There is a reason that there are a lot of people who are betting on decentralized finance at the same time, because we're getting at a point that the growth is stalling because of these central nodes of failure, because of these central command and control systems that are too slow. We talked about it before in our previous episodes that this is a problem in the companies, but if you go beyond companies, go beyond countries, and go to the global economy, it's the same. There's so many single points of failure in governments, in the slowness of the governments, regulators, and all of that, and the economic wheels that going on that basically makes everything very slow. And then humans are really protective and they want to centralize everything. That's one aspect. The other aspect the way I see from agentic economies is intelligence becomes distributed, becomes dare I say it, a commodity. The basic intelligence, basic knowledge, and data becomes basically common knowledge. Anyone can actually very quickly draft up enough knowledge about the topic to talk about it using ChatGPT nowadays, right? So that slowly becomes those kind of like memories, people being able to memorize things, those kinds become commodities. And then the more and more we have multifunctional agents that can adapt and collaborate with each other, distribution of tasks and also distribution of things going on around will be more and more visible. And that, in my mind, contributes to much faster growth of our global economy than we can manage ourselves by as the way we're doing it now. But if you want to summarize it, how would you summarize that? The
Yeah.
differences.
I think one of the but I just when you were talking, I just something that came to mind. One of lot of times executives they tell us, yeah, we have people working in this division like finance, and only if they could pick up the phone and talk to the pricing, or to talk to the sales, things would be different. We could take more better. You see, it's a difficult part. That's where being human comes into picture. You feel things awkward. Yeah, we don't like people. Sometimes sometimes we are uncomfortable talking to other people, but agents don't have that. I mean, so a person from finance may not talk to a person from sales, but I think the agent doesn't have any problem talking to whoever to get the stuff done. I think, and agents are very uninhibited, very very driven. You can call it entities that will do anything that needs to be done. So that's one thing. I think that's a big difference when you look at decision drivers. Whether when humans take it versus agents take it. Agents really, all they care about is the outcome. They don't really care about everything in between, the bureaucracy and those things. I think from a scope perspective, like you said, there could be more task specific automation that we do today in the modern context, always with, okay, can I automate how you buy detergent from your machine based on the consumption? Yeah, but that's great. But then that's a very small part of it. From an agentic point of view, you can actually start looking at, okay, how do I fit the whole cleaning in my life? Do I need to clean it myself, or do I give it to somebody else? So the scope becomes much holistic, much more adaptive in the context of how people want to live their lives. So I think we can actually take it down to lifestyles and habits. And third, I think we spoke about this very well, structure. So it's a more kind of a centralized brain thinking versus a more decentralized network thinking. So I always like to say, like, the modern economy is like a pride of lion. Everybody is very much on the control and territorial and dedicated roles and a lot of bureaucracy. But agentic economy is like a swarm of bees. Everybody knows what they need to do and they coordinate with one another, and each contributing to the well-being of the hive together. I think a lot of the industrial frameworks and a lot of the industrial settings and structures, I think they're going to change towards more peer-to-peer, more network-based. I think that is one thing that I see as a consequence of this. I also see de-verticalization of industries. I think there'll be a lot more convergence that coming between. I mean, look at IoT, for example. When you have pay as you drive, those kind of business models, you don't say like, okay, yeah, this part is insurance and this part is telecom. It's one concept that works together. I think we will see more of that coming in the case of agentic economy. I think the whole industrial structures and economy and principles, I think they are no longer relevant. I think that's where I want to bring in the IMF report. Maybe we can also share the link
Yeah, and to
in
be
the
clear,
comments.
IMF is International Monetary Fund.
Monetary fund, and they basically they created a report where talk about effect of AI on income equality, on the concentration of industries, in terms of what's going to happen, the role of policies and productivity. And I don't agree with that, because I think irrespective of what their conclusions are, I think the whole analysis framework is not right, because they are over reliance on centralized models for productivity growth and what government should do, not really completely ignoring the whole decentralized aspect, how agents really work. Similarly, ignoring the market dynamics and how that could reduce income equality. I mean, when social media was launched, nobody could predict that a lot of people will be making a lot more money as influencers and as social media marketers. So people find ways to connect and network, and the bigger the network grows, the more opportunities are created. So I think the view on income inequality, I think, is very mistaken. Same for industrial concentration. If you think from a vertical lens, then you're making a big mistake, because the industries are converging into one industrial ecosystem. And same for the policy. I think a lot of guidance, a lot of times you're assuming that it's the government who will make the decisions, but that's not true. I mean, if you look at the case of Uber, the laws and the frameworks came much late. The decentralized system of transportation came much before that. A lot of people jumped on the bandwagon, and then government took cognizance of that and then started creating some legal frameworks around it. So I think the IMF view, I would say, is oversimplified, and I think they're not understanding how agents really work and how they create value in the network case. So I would really urge
First
them
of all,
to have a relook at the analysis and the
first
assumptions that
of
they're
all,
making.
yeah. First of all, I'm very happy that for once you have some beef with something, and it's not that I'm not only the only guy who has some views. So that's number one. But I tend to agree with you. I think to me, it felt like they're just basically wanted to jump on the bandwagon, have an opinion, rather than, okay, how do we really analyze this? It's the challenge I have with these big international regulatory or research organizations is that they're trying to analyze things based on years ago, not what's happening now. They don't have the context. They don't really use the context of decision making. They don't use the context of data. To me, they don't understand that a lot of problems and a lot of things actually can be solved through the same technology. The income inequality, that it's already there. There's not much more can happen, like other than basically if everybody else dies and a few billionaires living, that's already there. We can actually make more decentralized systems, centralized models, decentralized economies by embracing these technologies. I have the opposite view. And I'm so happy that I didn't have to start by having a beef again. So you started that, so people can blame you next time.
Yeah. No, I think if I believe that if you give people opportunities and freedom and access and inclusion and include them, people are creative. They will find. I never thought like influencer, the whole influencer economy and things, like a lot of these things are happen in retrospective. So they analyze. Economists try to always look backwards and trying to figure out why it happened, just what happened. They never, when it comes to these new technology and changes, I think the predictive capabilities of these models are is very very low. The assumptions are very very low. Moving on, I think let's talk a bit about what we think are the value drivers. What creates value in the agentic economy, and what would it be as an implication for business and commerce? How should companies start? So if somebody is thinking about agentic economy, or agents in general, where does the agents create value for them, and what could be like the far-reaching implications for them in the next 5 to 10 years? What do you think?
So value drivers, I think the main one is still hyper efficiency. I think that's the biggest value driver of agent economy. I think, or agents in general, you can be much more efficient, and it's not about, okay, here's how we can do this, what we have done all the time faster. It's about, okay, can we actually do it completely differently and combine a few things together? This is what we discuss a lot about company operations, but this is basically everywhere, right? Can you rethink how you do things? I am personally amazed how much more productive I have become since I've learned how to create my own minion agents here and there for dealing with things that I don't want to deal with. So just that is huge. Then I think the fact that these create different kinds of transactions, and if you combine that both from a perspective of decentralization through the blockchain technologies and so on, that also help create a layer of trust into the agentic decentralized agentic market, then the expansion of the market is amazing, right? So it's all of a sudden there's an even less barrier to entry to create new solutions and services across the globe. The same way internet has enabled that. You can create significantly more value through software, and I think that would be the next stage. Personalization is another one. I think you can have hyper personalized everything, right? That is the one that I'm personally very excited about. Is like you can go back to becoming yourself, because the traditional way of personalizing was not really personalizing. It was basically trying to make you look like everybody else who watched that specific TikTok video, and narrow you down to that so you couldn't be yourself. But that's something. Anything else that you were thinking about?
I think network effects, because you have like what we discussed last time. Now when agents joined the ecosystem, then you have 100 times more active workers who are creating value, but that 100 times higher value is being divided among the same set of people. So from a welfare perspective, I think when we say, okay, where are we getting value from? The first step getting value is by making better decisions, because right now we take very bad decisions. We kind of take one outcome at a time, or one objective at a time. Two objectives becomes too complex for most optimization systems. But here we're talking about dynamically optimizing 5 10 different objectives. So how do we improve the price performance while taking care of sustainability, while taking care of equality? How can I give fit for purpose offerings for different market? So a lot of these kind of cases, so the value which is currently uncapturable, inaccessible, I think that becomes accessible to a lot of companies. We can see a lot more disintermediation. That means you don't need intermediaries to do transactions. I mean, the whole the purpose, I think, the business case for digitalization is to just reduce the friction. And how can we basically, if you look at the direct to home models or direct to customer models, you don't really, it kind of showed you that you can actually have a very strong, smooth, flu flowing network without actually passing the ownership of product from one entity to another. I think the new, we discovered new micro markets. For example, look at energy market, or like, kind of in case of charging. Now it's possible to not look like one big market, but really having very, very millions of niche markets. And that will give chance to both startups, because they can dominate a few niches, or to enterprises which can dominate a number of different markets. So I think just by segregating or segmenting the markets into smaller ones creates more efficiency for people who are in the market, also gives an opportunity to equal opportunity to people to create new value or new sources of value there. And one example is, for example, when you look at the machine to machine communication. So we talk about this
That's
intermodal
interesting.
transportation. How can you basically have a very frictionless transportation? I can just go from a cab to a train to a airport, a taxi, and everything, without really paying a lot of money, but really everybody is optimizing at the same time. Better pricing, I think we can make a lot of things a lot more affordable if we can just take away those inefficiencies. We can make the assets, for example, a lot of times we spoke about the future of manufacturing, like why do you need to own a manufacturing plant? I think we already see that happening in China, because they have massive plants there, and all you need to come up with is your design, and they can customize it anything for you, right? So manufacturing as a service. So a lot of those infrastructure that we have today, which is dead infrastructure because people are just sitting on it, a lot of that infrastructure, the value, the potential of that could be unleashed for people. I mean, I see a possibility where I can basically get something made in one plant, owned by a company, and then get it customized somewhere else, and the sky is the limit when it comes to personalization. So I
You-
think a lot more value is being trapped because of the ownership based model, these centralized models, which is more prohibitive, which don't allow people to come and be inclusive, and those barriers are breaking. And suddenly the companies, organizations like IMF, who have been kind of built on around that foundation, suddenly feel very threatened, because now
yeah,
the structures are no longer applicable, and it's opening up, and it squares. So what do you do when you're scared? You try to scare other people. I think that's what's
exactly.
going on. It's a lot of this fear mongering happening.
Yeah, well, what you said about machine to machine communication, you reminded me that I need to be the comic relief again. Just remind, I was watching this video. There is this company in the US. You know, the phone scammer to elderly market is huge in the US.
Mhm.
People call elderly people and empty their bank accounts. So they created this grandma's agent sound that basically answers scammers' questions and then basically continues talking to them forever. It is funny, but then what happened is actually in reality is that there are quite a lot of these scammers who are creating their own agents to call, so they don't have to bother themselves to call people, and they can actually clone voices
Mhm.
now, so they don't have to call like someone and then they say, well, your accent looks weird, so I'm not sure if you're the right person calling from the right country, right? So, and then at some point these two agents got caught each other up, and it was a never-ending conversation to please each other, which was so super funny to watch. So if you Google that and watch the video on YouTube, it's the most amazing thing to watch, because these agents are also built for pleasing the other side and then trying to give answers, and then it became complete nonsense of agreeing on each other, but it's total nonsense giving each other back and forth. So that was funny. But I tend to agree, and I think the being conscious of time, what we need to also cover, I would like us to cover, is how do we transition to agentic economy, and what are the challenges that we see. The obvious one, I think, it's, to me, having a better support for decentralized systems,
Yeah.
networks, and contracts. I think that is a given if you want to really scale them to the economy level. We all know things like self-driving cars are not there because not because the technology can't manage it. It's mostly because we have to invent technology to meet the human regulations and human ways of working, and that's one of the problems. And also building trust in these agents and so on, and instead of fear mongering like IMF or others are doing, talking about the opportunities there, right? So that is, to me, the main challenges. But how do you think we should actually see and get ready for the transition? What do you see there?
Yeah, I think the guardrails are important. That, of course, because it's going to be a balance between how much freedom do we provide to the agents to explore and create new opportunities versus how much guardrails do we provide to them so that they work kind of in the framework. Because behavioral changes will take time, structural changes will take time. So we have to be cognizant. I think I'm all for creativity and all for innovation. I think we have to also be sensitive towards, towards how people would get impacted. I think if we are, if we have the basic guardrails around that, ethical ones, social ones, accountability, economy, making sure that people are, like I said in case of grandma, people on the vulnerable group is not being taken advantage of, like what you just explained in this case. I think we have to give agents a chance to find solutions that we have never thought about, for a very simple reason, not because people are not creative or intelligent, it's because people don't talk to other people. So a lot of times it happens because of collaboration. So I think it can unleash the collaboration, and the cultural aspect of the economy or transition, I think, should not be underestimated. I think now we should just wrap up. So I think we started with defining agentic economy, or at least the principles of agentic economy.
Yep.
We basically also try to distinguish them from the more modern industrial economy, and we see what happens, why there are differences, and what happens if you take the old frames and try to analyze the new systems, why you come to wrong conclusions, as we saw in the IMF report. We also looked at the value drivers of agentic economy, how agents create value, and what could be potential impact on the industries in terms of new markets, in terms of ecosystems, in terms of uh, ownership and access to infrastructure. And then we also discussed how we can transition and what challenges, for example, infrastructure, decentralized infrastructure, building some kind of ethical rules, building trust, adapting to the regulations, and such. Have I missed something?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I think the most important thing is combining the autonomy, decentralization, and collaboration, right? So those three are the way we can unlock the economic opportunities and potential. And I think if I give an example, is that a service company, let's say as a software service company, has always been growing linearly to with how many people they can hire. That could not be the case. The growth of providing software services, digital services, could be much bigger, and the service companies who can actually become more exponential growth companies as well with these kind of things. That's one example of impact if you put this positive spin on it. So, or look at it from a glass half full perspective, right? So with that, I think let's wrap up. Thank you so much for listening and being with us. We will cover more interesting topics, especially around innovation and impact on innovation in the coming weeks. So stay tuned.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.